So I've been at Loyola for about 15 years, and my role now, in addition to being a professor in the undergrad program as well as the reading specialist program, is co-director. Many of you also know Leah Saul, who is my counterpart in that role. And we've had different iterations of orientation for faculty, but we just felt like there's so many little kind of nitpicky things that we don't want to always be sending you an email and say, here's what you do now, here's what you do now. So we're trying to get this down. And as you saw the agenda, I don't know if all of you saw it, but I just sent you a copy of the Loyola the Literacy Handbook, the student handbook. And before we look at that, I'm going to show you how to find that on the in the Moodle site. So what I'm going to do first is share my screen with you so you can see my Inside Loyola. And all of you, I think, except maybe Gabby, oh, I know, Alicia, you can see the Inside Loyola, but not the faculty piece yet. But if you go down to the Web Advisor, whoops, I'm sorry, I'm looking at something else. We'll look at Web Advisor later. When you look at your classes, and whether you're looking at this from a student or a faculty perspective, you see the classes over here, and it will not show the Loyola Literacy class. So what you have to do is you have to go into a class, and when that shows up, then you click Home. And then when you scroll down, depending on how many classes you actually have there, you come to a site that's called Literacy Program. Okay, let's see, I've got okay. Oh, okay. Yes, thanks, Monica, for that note. And if you don't make it through, Monica, I'll try to get the video posted so you can see that as well, okay? Let me get out of there. So in the literacy program, there's lots of information, and there's just one, okay, but right up at the top is the reading specialist, let's see, documents. So the literacy program handbook is there, but also I have sent one to you. But when students ask you a question about the program, even things like what's the next class I take, or what do I do to apply for graduation, and they'll ask you, even though you're not full-time faculty, they ask those questions. That's my husband's cell phone. Hold on. He's going to get it. Okay. So when they ask you those questions, if you don't know, that's okay. But you can tell them that the first place for them to look is in the literacy program handbook. That a lot of the things that they're asking us as instructors, they can look that up themselves, and it's in that handbook. So I'm going to stop this share, and then I'm going to share the actual handbook with you, and we're going to look at a number of things in that to start with.
Wendy?
Yes.
Do students have access to the literacy program Moodle, or is that only for faculty?
Students have access to that. So okay. Again, we try in their first class to orient them to that, and they do also have an orientation where they find out about that, but sometimes they forget because they don't use it very well, and excuse me, so they may not be aware that they have it, but again, you can remind them. That's where they can find the handbook, and there's lots of other kind of good things that they can find there as well. So we're going to look first at page 4. Whoops, I went too fast here. Okay, so one of the things that we want all of our faculty to be aware of is the mission, and this is the mission of Loyola University. So you should have that on your screen, and I'm going to give you just a minute here to read that. And I think the main thing, this fits so well with our literacy standards, and we're actually getting new standards, and we're going to be changing a number of courses in the next year or two, but we've always had an emphasis on social justice and ethical responsibility, and the reading teacher is such a so important in that role in responsibility for the students. So we're also going to look at the conceptual framework, which is on page 5. Okay, where did it go? Okay, so I think we're looking at that, the academic program. So the programs within the School of Education, we have undergraduate programs and a number of things, and then we have within the teacher ed program the Master of the Arts of Teaching and the Literacy Education. So those are the 2 graduate programs in our department. And on page 6 is the literacy, the mission of the literacy program, which is right down here. So you can see that much of that is very similar to the mission and the goal of the university. And then another thing that I wanted to check out, a couple other things in the handbook, is the assessment system for the School of Ed, which is on page 20, where it talks about our assessment system. And see, here's a page of faculty, and when we update that next year, we'll have your names on our faculty page as affiliate faculty. How about that? Okay. So assessment within the program. So because we're an accredited program, we are obligated to assess our students on a number of different levels, and we make sure that the assessments that we give meet the standards in the literacy program. So we have the Reading Specialist program, which meets the standards through the International Literacy Association, and then the TEL program, or Teaching English Language Learners. And right now we do not have any key assessments in the TEL program. So Ashley and Maria, you're teaching in the TEL, so you don't have to worry about any key assessments at this point. Within about 6 months, we're hoping to make a change in that. So these classes that are listed right here do have key assessments. So Gabby, you'll be doing 740. A couple of you will be working on the practicum, and Alicia, you're going to do 510 this summer, I think. Mm-hmm. So those will have key assessments, and when we send you the syllabus, it'll tell you which is a key assessment. And the key assessments, the main difference with those is that they are evaluated in this thing called live text, which those of you who've been through the program know what live text is. And live text, it says, is explained more fully on page 31 of this program. So if you're not sure if you have a key assessment in your science, or if you're not sure what it is, you always can reach out to me or Leah, and we'll make sure you have that information. But the students put their assignment for any key assessment into live text, and then we evaluate it there, and then all of that data is shared is saved so that when we have creditors come through, they can see that we're actually doing what we say we're doing as far as assessment. Then within the reading specialist, the students take the praxis exam. And again, students may ask you, when should I take the praxis? What do I need to pass the praxis? What number should I take? And then your response is, all of that information is in the student handbook. So you don't have to memorize that. I'm always forgetting what the score is, but they can find that in the handbook. And then at the end of every course, students are evaluated with this professional assessment review checklist, which I'm going to talk about in a little while. And again, right now we're not doing that assessment with our TEL students, but we will be within about a year. We'll be making that change. But I'll explain what that is and what the expectation is of you as a faculty. So we'll look at page 33 for live text here. Let's see. Okay, so this, again, for those of you who didn't go through our program, and if you're not sure what live text is, this gives you a good description of it. And students purchase live text, but if you're a faculty member who has a key assessment, then you will get a faculty subscription to live text, and that will come, let me see if her name is on here. No, it doesn't have it. That comes through a person named Heather Moore. But again, if you have a key assessment, we'll hook you up with Heather Moore once, like before your class begins. And so those of you who are students or have been students, you have a live text account, but you need a different account for your faculty, to be a faculty. So Alicia, when you finish the program and then get ready to teach that class this summer, we'll hook you up with Heather so that you get a live text account that's for faculty. And again, the students submit their assignment to live text, and you assess it there with a rubric that's already been loaded up. We, as a program, give all the rubrics to Heather, and she loads them there, and then she tells you what you have to do to evaluate that. So the one thing in using those rubrics in live text is, you know how rubrics act is they give a percentage. So let's say it's a 4-point rubric and you get 3s all down the line, which is a good score. It's kind of a proficient, might be what we would call it, but then it looks like you've only gotten 75%. But the student probably is not, if they get a 3 all down the line, they're going to get a higher grade than 75%. So that's a way where you as the teacher can use your judgment. You evaluate it with live text, but then you give them a grade that might be slightly different than what their percentage comes out on the rubric. So if you have any questions about, the difference between what they get in their evaluation on live text and what you actually would give them as a grade, you're welcome, again, to contact either me or Leah if that becomes okay, so what else are we looking at in here? So one other thing, I didn't put the page number, but let me see. Most of your, I'm going to stop this share for right now, and I'm going to show you another document. Okay, so this is just, I am trying to bring this over. Okay, so I can see it. So this is a statement that is probably in all of the syllabi that you will be sent, and those of you, again, who have been students have seen this statement before. But it's the disability support services, and this is something that we're legally obligated, but also ethically obligated to follow through on. So if a student in a graduate class says to you, oh, I have a learning disability and I need accommodations in this or that, they need to register with Disability Support Services, which this is the email or the phone number that they can contact. And you as the teacher can't make that decision. You can't say, oh, yeah, okay. Now, if it's something really simple where they just say, I need a little more time on a test, sure, you can make that kind of decision. But if they're asking for some rather unusual accommodations, and sometimes we do have students that ask for those kinds of things, in order for us to be students, we do need them to register with Disability Support Services. So this is in all of our syllabi. And again, if a student were to come up to you and say, this is what I need, then your response is, here's the number, here's the email. They will contact me if you are actually registered with them. And that's all done. It used to be students had to hand you a piece of paper, but now it's all done through the Disability Support Office. And if you do have a student with a disability, they will email you and say, so-and-so is in your class, this is their disability, these are the accommodations that have been approved for that student. But we just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Okay, so we're going to look at the literacy program of study, which is in the handbook, but it's also available here online. So I'm going to show you this. So this is through loyola.edu, School of Education, and you can find the literacy program there. And again, we have right now we have 3 programs, and again, that's going to be changing and as soon as we get all of our documentation. But right now we have the Reading Specialist program, a literacy teacher, which is very similar to the Reading Specialist, except it's not the practicum, doesn't include the practicum. And then we have the Certificate in Teaching English Language Learners. So just also for those of you who are teaching in the TEL program, I'll just switch to that here for a second, and you can see this is the curriculum, the program outcomes, and this might be helpful for you to see if you're teaching. I'm going to move your pictures over here. For example, I know, Ashley, you're teaching 604. I think you and Monica are both teaching 604 this spring. So you can see kind of the progression of where students have been, what courses they've taken, and where they're going. So because 604 is right now being offered in the second half, all of your students right now are in this class Language, Literacy, and Culture in the first half. And then they'll finish the TEL program in the summer with this assessment class. Some of your students in the TEL program are actually in a master's degree, which is Master in Curriculum and Instruction. And so they will take these 5 courses, and then they'll take a number of 5 other courses that are in specifically curriculum and instruction. So if some of them will finish this summer with just a certificate, and then some of them will take this other class. Okay, and then this is the Reading Specialist program, and again, this gives all of the courses that they take and kind of gives the order. We don't always stick drastically to this order. I remember, Gabby, when you were going through, because you were kind of on a different you weren't in a cohort and we were just like, what courses can you get in because you were trying to do it full time. So we try to kind of put these courses first. They're kind of our foundational courses, and then these are methods courses, and then our last courses are the research and the practicum block. So again, if you're teaching a course, you could look at this and see, oh, where does that fit, and kind of where have they been and where are they going next. Okay, before I move on in the agenda, are there any questions? Do we need to stop for any questions?
I just wanted to know, Monica, did you teach the course previously?
So I'm not teaching any TEL courses. I'm only teaching RE 737, 739.
Okay. Oh, I think it was Maria. Maria is.
I was like, not me.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, and Maria's gone.
No, I'm still here, but I've not taught it before either.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, so that class we have 3 people teaching it this spring. The third person is Dr. Afra Hersey, who is currently the chair of our department, but she hasn't taught it before either. But there is, the syllabus has been developed, and I'm trying to think who taught it. But for those of you who are teaching 604, if you have questions about the curriculum, it would be Christina Collins. And just send me an email and I can send you her email. Okay, other questions? Okay, so we're going to go back to the handbook, and we're going to talk about the PAR form and instructions, and then the dispositions. So let me see where that is. Here it is. Okay, so okay, I think it's on page 27. Yes. So starting on 26. So this is a professional assessment form, and my hope is that you only need to use this for disposition assessments, which we'll talk about second. But if you have just a real outlier student who is not following normal classroom protocol, you may feel like you have to fill this form out for the student, and I'll give you a couple of examples of what has happened. Well, when I was chair, because then as the chair has to deal with all of these eventually. But I had a student who stood up in class, not in the reading specialist program, but yelled at the instructor because she didn't like what the instructor was saying. This was in a graduate class. So the instructor handled it really well, but she did feel like she needed to fill this form out. So that would be an extreme example. I had another student in a practicum situation who was calling children names in the class. And we had to get that filled out right away because we had to have her removed from that classroom. So again, these things don't happen often, but if you were to be in a situation where a student is just really having some bizarre behaviors, you want to look at this form and say, which one am I going to check? Interpersonal skills might be something, ethical knowledge and behavior. So again, if somebody plagiarizes a paper, that might be something that you feel, I mean, sometimes we have one quote that they didn't properly cite. That would be different than sending you a paper that maybe another student has already submitted, those kinds of things. So if it's egregious enough that you have to fill this form out and get it to the chair, you can contact me or Leah, and we'll help kind of walk you through that. This is inside the student handbook. That's a PDF, so if you need that form, we can send it to you in a Word document so you can actually fill it out. We do ask if you feel that this student is behaving in kind of a strong enough way that you fill it out and that you meet with the student and you ask the student to sign that they, and all you're doing is meeting and saying, here's your behavior, here's why I'm filling out this form, I want you to sign it. And sometimes students won't sign it. And you can say, that's okay. You just sign it and date it and document that you actually gave the student the form. Okay? And then it goes from there to the chair, and the chair has a meeting with the student. And sometimes the student has to be removed from the program. Those couple of really bizarre cases that I was describing, we did have to remove people from the program. But in most cases, it may be something where you have some concern about their academic performance, their written communication, and the one that we hear about the most is attendance and punctuality. So you're teaching these 8-week courses, and if they miss one class, we're sort of like, okay, we'll give you one class. But if they miss more than one class in an 8-week class, they're really missing a lot of content. So our attendance policy says you can miss one class. If you miss 2, you may have a lower grade. If you miss 3, you will probably fail the class. So, so if you have somebody who's consistently late or has, an attendance issue, and even if the issue is that they have, a death in the family or something like that, we want to know about it because, again, not that I'm saying students aren't always truthful, but if we find out, oh, this student has a death in the family every quarter, that's something we as Leah and I need to deal with. So this gives us, so at the end of the class, this form is on live text. And again, this is for right now only for our reading specialist students. So if you're teaching a TEL class, you don't need to do this. But for reading specialist, at the end of each 8-week session, we ask you to go on live text. The student doesn't have to do anything. And we just ask you to check, yes, they're okay, no, they're not okay, for all of these things. And again, that form is already on live text, and you're just checking yes or no. And then if you say academic performance or attendance or appropriate behavior, we would appreciate it if you just give us a sentence or two. What was going on? Why are you checking that? Again, this really helps us to kind of keep track of students over time. So it may be that one semester a student has some attendance issues because somebody was sick in their family, they had car trouble, or just any number of things. But if that happens 2 or 3 quarters in a row, then that's something where Leah and I need to get together. We need to talk to that student and just say, all of your professors are saying your academic performance is great, but your attendance is not great. And that's a disposition that we really value and that we feel like it is important that you're there. If you can't maintain that, maybe this isn't the best time for you to be in the program. So those are some of the things that would happen from that. But you will get a reminder about that after you're finished teaching your class, and it will just ask you to go on live text and fill out the disposition form for each of your students. And 90% of the time, you're going to fill that out and check yes, 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 yes. They're all fine. Okay? Every once in a while, you'll have that one student where you'll have some different things that you check, and then you just let us know what that behavior was. But again, if that behavior in any of those areas is so egregious that you feel like I can't just wait until the end of the semester, I'm going to fill out a PAR form, then just let us know and we'll make sure you have the proper materials to be able to do that. Okay.
So Wendy, just to clarify,
Yes.
if we're checking no in any of those areas on the dispositions assessment in live text, we don't necessarily have to fill out this PAR form as well.
No.
But if it's something like larger, like academic dishonesty or something like that, then we would fill this out earlier within the semester.
Yes. And sometimes, so just to be also full disclosure, sometimes people, and even you like to wait. It may be, if it's academic dishonesty or if it's some form of, like I had a written communication one and I didn't fill out a PAR form, but if I felt like it was strong enough, I might have waited because I don't want the student to be mad at me all semester.
Right.
You know, so even with a PAR, you may say, or you may talk with me and Leah and decide, I'm going to fill that out. It's more than just a problem with a disposition, but I'm going to fill the PAR form out, and maybe I'll meet with the student the last day of class. Because sometimes that can get really uncomfortable if you've told students, so I had a student a few semesters ago who was an English language learner herself. And so I tried to be accommodating with the written communication, but I also encouraged her every time she turned a paper in to go to the Writing Center, that they could be very helpful to her. And it was obvious in her written work that she was not asking for help. And so I did fill out a form, but I waited until the end, although throughout the semester I was letting her know that I wasn't happy with her performance in that area.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good question. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to look at, let me get my agenda here, is WebAdvisor and class rosters. So I will, let's see, go back to, let's see, yes. Okay. So again, if I go back here to the faculty home, and again, for those of you who are not seeing a faculty inside Loyola, you may not have this information quite yet. But under WebAdvisor, I can look at faculty information and, oh, okay. So I have to re-sign in, I think. Sorry. Okay, so when I click on faculty information, it'll give me a number of different things. And one of the things that I can look at is class roster. So, and you can click on any of these classes. So let's see, I'll just click on one that I taught in the fall. And the class roster gives me all of my students' names. It gives me their emails. It gives me their student number if I were to need that. And this was an undergrad class, so it gives the year that they'll graduate. So what we want you to do with your class roster is, after the first night of class, double check your roster and make sure that everybody that's on the roster has attended class. Now, if you are to get an email from a student saying, I'm in your class, but I'm not going to be able to attend the first class, my car just broke down, or I went into labor, or, you know, all those things that happen, then you can count that student as having attended, because they've at least contacted you and let you know why they're not there. But you want to you want to make sure that those two things match. The other thing is, if you have somebody in your class who's not on the class roster, you can check with Greta. And before we leave tonight, I'll give you Greta's email, because she's going to be an important person as far as all of these things that have to do with who's in your class and who isn't in your class. So either way, if you have somebody on the roster who doesn't attend, you want to fill out a form, and Greta can show you where that form is. Or you want to if you have somebody who attends but is not on the roster, you want to check with Greta and make sure they actually are supposed to be in your class. Maybe they're in the wrong section, or maybe they have not fully registered yet. All of those things could be something that could be going on. So you want to make sure that you communicate with Greta if either of those things happen. Then you will also get a reminder sometime over the 8 weeks. So the other time you want to contact Greta is if you have a student who is either not attending, so is going to get an F because they're not coming to class or not turning in any assignments, or if they're just turning in assignments and they're very low quality. So we want to know by about the 5th week if you have anybody who is in danger of failing. And again, the person to contact with that information would be Greta. So here is Greta's email. Okay, so Greta Brueck, and I'll leave this up here for a little bit, and that's her email. Okay, and then the other thing on WebAdvisor, so I'm going to look back into WebAdvisor again, is if I look at search for sections, so you can find information about your class in this. So I'm going to just do a search for spring, and since we have 3 people teaching RE 604, I'll search for that so you can see what that looks like if you haven't ever looked at this. Okay, so RE 604, we'll look at, let's look at Maria's, because she has 2 sections, although Maria, obviously you're only teaching 1 section, but it has section 601 and section 602. The reason for this is that when we set up a cohort, we can't put other people into that cohort, and so they have their own section, but we can put other people into the class. So Maria has this class right here. It shows that there's room for 20 people, and then she has another section of the same class where there's room for 5 people, and there's only 1 seat left, so that means 19 are enrolled here, and there's 1 seat left here, so there's 4 people enrolled. So she has 23 people altogether in this section, and these 2. So actually, you only have 6 people in your class. So, and that's because that's a small cohort down in Prince George's County. But we can also look at Dr. Hersey's. So she's got 2 different sections. Again, she has 12 plus 6 here in these 2 different sections of cohorts. So sometimes you might have, so in this situation, we only have room for 20 students, but our classes generally are capped at 25. So if we ended up with more people who needed to register in this section, it may look like you're having an overload, but really if you don't go over 25, you're not having an overload. okay? Sometimes those numbers are capped for different reasons, and some of it has to do with record stuff that I don't even understand. But we just, if your class is capped, for example, at 20, and you end up with 23 students, again, you're not being asked to do an overload. That the 25 is kind of the magic number for most of our classes, but a lot of them are much smaller. But the other thing, if you click on this right here, you get details on that class. It gives the dates when they're meeting and the dates when they're meeting in person and when they're meeting online. And you can also look for the books that are needed. So these are the books that are needed for that class. And students also have information about this so that they can easily see what are the books that are required, and they can order them through the bookstore right here. So I don't know that the books are the next thing that we were going to talk about, but I do want to ask and make sure, especially those who are teaching in the spring, make sure that you have the books that you need. Does anybody not have your books yet if you're teaching this spring?
I don't. Am I?
Okay. Who is that?
Gabby.
Gabby. Okay. So you're not teaching until
May.
Right.
Yeah, it's the summer. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I will
Never
explain.
mind.
Yeah, I will explain what will happen with those. Okay.
Wendy,
Yes.
I am missing the genre book that I need for 737
Okay.
and 739.
Okay. Yeah, Monica, will you email me that, and I'll get somebody to order that for you right away.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's, again, just search for sections, and you can search for the class number, or you can search for your own name. So some of you have unusual names, so you can search for your first name or your last name, and you may be the only one that's teaching at Loyola with that name. If I search for my last name, I get a whole bunch of classes. It doesn't really help me. So I usually search for the class number when I'm searching for something I'm teaching. But if you don't have such a common name, it works better to search by name. Okay, so let's see. Now we'll talk about the syllabi and how to maintain the integrity of the course. So you will get a syllabus either from me or from Leah, and most of the time those are syllabi that have been developed by a previous person, most often by somebody who's full-time. And then you also should be given a name of somebody to talk to if you have questions about the content of the syllabus. You can ask Leah and me questions primarily about the logistics, the things that we're talking about tonight, how to use Moodle, how to use Zoom, all of those kinds of things. But if you're talking about the content, we want you to ask the person on our faculty who's kind of in charge of the class. So that would be, again, you should get a name of somebody when you get the syllabus. And if you don't, then just ask and we'll give you that name. So as far as the integrity of the class, there's a couple of things that we do ask. And one is that if you have a key assessment, that you do teach that assignment exactly as it's written and follow the rubric that's placed in live text, because that goes with our assessment system, and we do have to maintain those records. The second thing is, for the most part, we do want you to use the assignments that are in the syllabus. But if you have something that you think would work better and it meets the standards that you're teaching, we're fine with that. That if you tweak it or adjust it to make it work better for you. I know myself as a teacher that I work better with something that I've developed or that I've made my own, rather than just doing a rote lockstep with something somebody else did. hopefully most of the time we'll give you a syllabus that's broken out for 8 weeks if you're teaching an 8-week class. Alicia, I think this summer you're teaching a class that's shorter than 8 weeks, but you'll have 8 sessions. So even though you can run your sessions, the students will just have to work a little bit faster to get that all into the time frame. But for the most part, you'll get a syllabus that kind of meets the time frame that, or the number of sessions that you'll be working with. And again, there will be, most of the time we also will give you access to a Moodle site that somebody else has developed. So all of the resources and all of those things you can just transfer over to your Moodle site so that you're not having to build that from scratch every time that you teach. Again, you can take what works for you and leave what doesn't work for you. So those of you who will be working in the practicum, and Monica, you've been doing, I've heard, an excellent job with our assessment courses. Those courses are a little bit more lockstep because especially the assessment courses then run into the practicum, and then the practicum is run all together. So there might be 4 or 5 sections of it being run at the same time, but we all want the students to be doing the same thing in those classes. But for the most part, you can make little changes in your syllabi and make it your own. We do tell you what the textbooks will be, and we do provide the textbooks. So what I'll do is in the next couple of weeks for the summer courses, I'll put a list together of all the books that we need to order. One of our administrative assistants will order all those books. Primarily, we try to get them free from publishers. We can't always do that, but if we order them early enough, we have a better chance of getting them for free. And then I tell her who they go to. So we're in a great position right now because we know who all of our teachers will be this summer. Sometimes we get closer to the semester and we still don't know who's going to be teaching. But so I'll give the list to the administrative assistant. She will order all of the books, and then we'll begin to distribute them. So I know, Gabby, I think you're starting like on May 13th, the week of May 13th.
Right.
So what I will try to do is to make sure you have the books in your hands no later than the end of March.
Okay.
So
great.
And if you don't hear from me and it gets past that date, don't be afraid to remind me and say, hey, what's going on with the books? Sometimes the publishers don't always send us what we ask for, or they take a little bit longer. We just had an administrative assistant quit who had been working on all the books. So, Monica, that might be why you haven't received the book that you need for this semester, although I when I was checking, I thought they all had been distributed, but we'll get that out to you as soon as we can. Okay, so you should get the books. I'm the one that's responsible for kind of organizing that. So if you have any questions about your textbooks, let me know. And hopefully, my goal is always that you have them at least a month before you start teaching, so that you're not like looking at it the day before class and saying, oh, I've never seen this book before, but everybody will be reading this along with me. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to stop again for just a second and see if there's any questions in general. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some technology services. If you're teaching online, you can still call technology and say, oh, I'm supposed to be doing X, Y, or Z, and it's not working. And the number to call technology is 410-617-5555. and they're pretty good about getting, especially if you're trying to use Zoom and it's not working for whatever reason, or you're trying to get a class roster, or just whatever you're trying to do with technology, you can call them. If you're doing something, if you're trying to set something up with Moodle, there are a number of tutorials that you can look at with Moodle. I'm glad to meet with anybody who needs just like a kind of run through on Moodle, and I did that with Ashley in the fall, getting her ready. Maria, if you need that kind of service, we can arrange a time where we would maybe take about 30 or 45 minutes and just go through some of the basics of Moodle. If you can also email technology at ots@loyola.edu. But you will get faster service if you call them. And they're open. I think most nights when we have classes, they're open till about 8 o'clock, at least 8 o'clock. So that would be a good thing to call them if you're having some problem with that. Let's see what else about technology. If you have questions about live text, Heather would be the person to call. And again, she's Heather Moore, and her email is HAMOORE@loyola.edu. So if you have any questions about your assignments or anything else, getting your live text account, you would talk to Heather. If you're on live text and you don't know how to do something, there is a special live text help number, and it's right there in the live text page. So you can call them as well. Okay, so I'm going to look at the library and share that with you. The library is a great service, and it's Loyola Notre Dame Library. So let's see, it's lndl.org. There's also a button on the Inside Loyola homepage to get you to the library. And I know that many of you have used the services of the library as you've gone through the classes that you've taken. The other thing that the library has is they have these research modules, and let me see if I go there, if it will let me. Okay, are you seeing that page now? Do you see the research?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So this research modules, if you have students in your class that are really not using APA very well, you can just tell them, I want you to take this APA study guide. I'm sorry, that's a study guide. You go down here, citing sources in APA. And this is a self-guided tutorial, so you can just have them do that. And you might say, if you've got somebody who's just like, their citations are wrong and you've tried to work with them, or you've said, you need some help, then you could require them to do that, to do this module and show you proof that they got a certain percentage on that. And it depends on what you're teaching in the class, but that's a great resource for you. And what I think I'll do is I will send you my notes, the agenda, because it has lots of links that I've put in there. So then you'll have all the links that I had, and you'll have all the numbers. I'll put Heather's name on there as well. But this is really useful for both us as teachers as well as students. But the one, Alicia, when I was working with you in the research class, they had not yet developed all of this. But the next time I taught that class again this fall, and instead of having the librarian come in and meet with us, I just assigned some of these modules for our students. So it was really, it made it a little bit easier as far as the students could do some of that on their own time. And they just did a really fantastic job. So how to search ERIC, accessing sources, those are things that we did in class before, but now it's all online and they can do it right there. So those, depending on the class you're teaching, they may be useful to you or not. And then the last page that we're going to look at is the Writing Center. And again, I have a link to that on the page that I'll send you all. But this is something, again, that I refer students to the Writing Center all of the time. And there's this link right here where they can make an appointment that's online. So students out in PG County or Howard County or wherever they are, they cannot say, oh, I can't get to the Writing Center. But you can do an online tutoring via Zoom, and any student in our program should have the capability of doing that because they need the technology for their classes. So if they're really having trouble with their writing, just strongly encourage them to go to the Writing Center. Here's the link, and figure out a time when they can meet with somebody to get some help for their writing. And I always feel like my obligation as a teacher or instructor is to give students as much feedback as I can. And I know that you all will do that as well. But sometimes there just are those students whose writing is not at a level where it needs to be. And they need more help than you as the instructor can give them. So we want to refer them to the Writing Center. Let's see. Okay. So actually, it's about an hour in, and I have covered all the topics. What I had said at the bottom is if you need help with Moodle or Zoom, to let me know. So what I think I'm going to do is anyone who maybe wants to practice using Zoom can stay on. And if you're like, no, I've used Zoom or I don't need practice with that right now, you're welcome to sign off. And then if you'll let me know if you want to set up a time to do Moodle, we can do that at a later time. But before I have people sign off, I just want to ask one more time if there's questions.
Wendy, will we get any other follow-up steps? I feel like I just signed on for the summer, but in terms of getting set up as faculty at the school. Okay,
so yeah, you should get an email from somebody named Tanya Lewis.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember if we've sent her your name yet. And I have the paperwork ready to send to her, so probably I haven't sent that to her. But in the next week or two, you should get an email from Tanya, and they do a background check, and she'll give you that information. And then once the background check is done, then you should. Alicia, it will take probably a little bit longer because I don't know if they can put you in the system as a faculty until you finish with your program. But Katie, you're finished, so that it should go along. And you should have access to your, I would say usually it takes about 3 weeks once the whole process starts. So then you would be able to see your Moodle course and start getting ready to set that up and everything.
All right, thank you.
Okay. And Gabby, you may have to do that again because it's been a while since you taught for us. So
okay.
And
she'll be, I'll hear from Tanya Lewis too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And I think other than Alicia, the rest of you are in the system at this point. So, okay. Any other questions?
I was just going to say, I'll email you, but maybe a time next week if we could just go back over Moodle.
Okay.
I get it, but just like for transferring the syllabus to
Right.
the Moodle site and all that kind of stuff. I remember it, but it was a little while ago.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
I'm going to need the Moodle help as well. I've not ever worked with that particular
Okay.
system.
Okay. So let's see if you all would just send me an email so I don't forget who needs that, and we'll see if we can set up a time when everybody is available. I know. Let's see. Next Wednesday I am busy, but I don't want to leave it too late because some of you are teaching in March, so we may have to do it on a different evening. On Tuesday and Thursday, I teach until 7, so I could do it after 7 on Tuesday or Thursday also. So let's work together and try to find a date when we can work on that, okay?
And if not, I don't know about anybody else, but I know I've talked to you during like my planning time during the day.
Okay.
That works, because it might be hard to get everybody
Right.
at the same time. If that would be okay with you, but
okay. Yeah,
but I'll email you. So
I can't do it during the day. I know a lot of people are not available during the day. So yeah. Okay. So if you don't want to do Zoom help right now, you can sign off, and I'll go through some things in Zoom, and I'm going to stop the recording.